Welcome to not only Stuttgart Harvest Church, but also the church in Malvern. We told you yesterday at the end of our worship experience as a part of our next step that we were going to join you today at some point during the morning on Facebook and kind of go through the thing that we gave you yesterday as a part of the next step, which was the brown bag take-home lunch. I guess if you're watching this morning, it's breakfast.
Yes.
But looks something like this right
There it
here.
is.
If you were at Stuttgart Harvest Church or the church in Malvern, then you received one of those yesterday. We also understand that there may not be anybody watching right now live, which is fine, because this will be available all throughout the week. As we go forward, it'll be available for recording. But all we want to do this for the next few minutes is we're just going to talk about ways that we can feast on every word that comes from the mouth of God, the way we talked about yesterday, the way Jesus said it is a priority. It is something that should be even more important than that next meal that you're going to get that will satisfy that need that all of us understand.
Yes.
So Harley, with that being said, let's kind of jump into that. We have actually chosen a letter that was written by a very well-known individual, somebody by the name of James.
Yeah, James. And so if we were going by, and what we really do want to do what Cole said, we want to give you an example. So Cole and I are literally going to walk through this together, something that you would probably do at some point during your day or during your week by yourself.
And this is not the way
to
study.
No.
This is a way.
Yes.
And we understand that. Everybody's wired differently. Everybody looks at things a little bit different. This is just, excuse me, that Mountain Dew early in the morning. This is just kind of an example of how it might look.
Right. And so we suggest, Cole, we're telling them, hey, instead of just flipping through the Bible and picking, a verse,
right.
that you pick a new covenant book or letter out of the Bible and work your way through it, one paragraph at a time, and just kind of understand what is this saying, and work your way through that book.
Right, and take your time. I mean,
yes,
it's kind of like the old saying, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time.
One bite.
That's kind of what we're talking about here. You don't have to take the entire letter of James in one sitting. In fact, here in the next few, we're just going to look at the first 4 verses, in fact.
I mean, somebody could do that.
You could.
But you would lose so much because there's so much there. So a paragraph at a time, we're going to get more out of it. And so yesterday we said, this is not studying like we're studying for a test or gaining knowledge. This is a conversation. God's Spirit, in this moment, as Cole and I are talking together, God's Spirit is going to be using His words
that he left for us to use, which is really cool just to think about.
And so this is a holy conversation. It's as Cole likes to say, and I like this. It's a moment to touch the divine, and it's God's design. So
one of the things that we gave you yesterday in that brown bag, that little paper bag that you were given as you walked out, was inside of that bag, you have, it says, brown bag special, what's on the menu today? Glad you asked. And the first thing that you see is a couple of resources. Because, Harley, I'll be honest with you, I think that's the first thing that a lot of people wonder is, sometimes this can be like drinking from a fire hose, a fire hydrant. There's so much information. And so we've given you 2 specific resources, links, kind of. One to my.bible.com, which is a great resource. It's kind of a YouVersion Bible. Absolutely free.
You can use that on your phone.
Right. You can. I have that app on my phone. And then the other one, kind of the one that you and I are using today, is, and wow, I felt like I just got really loud all of a sudden. Maybe not. I don't know.
It's possible.
It's possible. And the other, what we're using today is actually called the blueletterbible.org. It's a link. It's a website. And I'll be honest with you, if that's the only resource that you have, it's probably enough.
It is good.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
So. Yes, I like it. So what we're going to do is simply, we're going to read this, and then we're just going to begin answering some of these questions using some of these resources and some things we know.
So if you jump into this letter, James chapter 1, again, we're just going to read, just for right now, the first 4 verses. James writes, "This letter is from James, a slave of God and of the Lord Jesus Christ. I am writing to the 12 tribes, Jewish believers scattered abroad. Greetings." Then he says, "Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. For you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. For when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing."
Yeah. One thing I want to say, when you pick a translation to use one that you can understand the language in. Cole and I we teach probably 80% of the time or more out of the New Living Translation because it kind of speaks our language.
Yeah.
So that's what Cole was reading from. And so the first thing we want to do is it says, get into the Word. What does it say? We want to see. So we kind of need to understand the context.
Right.
And the context, Cole, basically, what is the context of something?
So context is basically the who, the what, the why, the where, the when. It's just all of the things that go into the writing or the conversation or whatever that kind of. Context to me is the color. You know, it's kind of like coloring it in, shading it in a little bit so that things, maybe the hidden meaning or the thing that's in there that maybe you wouldn't pick up otherwise if you didn't know who was talking and who they were talking to and why they were talking.
Because it might be different. Here, he says he's talking to Jewish believers.
Right.
It might be different if this were the letter that Paul wrote to the Romans because he's speaking to a whole different group.
It's interesting. There's actually controversy, a little bit of controversy because there seems to be, some people think that James and Paul kind of butted heads a little bit because James did write in this letter, he kind of says, hey, I'm writing to the Jewish believers because, but again, context, whereas Paul wrote a lot of his stuff, of course, to the non-Jewish believers, but the context of that's important because one of the things that we're pretty confident about James, it's the first letter, and so it would make sense it's to the Jewish believers.
Mostly.
That might have been all there was.
Yeah,
Paul hasn't showed up yet.
Yes.
Right. So you say, how do you know that? How do you know? I mean, James doesn't say in verse 1, this is the first. I'm number one here. I'm the first. So hardly that comes back to kind of reaching back into research and smarter people than me.
Yeah, me too.
And seeing what they had to say called commentaries,
right? And that's where that Blue Letter Bible comes in.
Because, man, you can literally click a button and you can go to commentaries. You've got all kinds of commentaries to understand context and to understand translation and all that. So what we've
I just want to make a comment. Part of also the context is what came before and what comes after. And in this passage,
Jesus came before.
Jesus was before.
Right.
And really kind of what was before too is part of this context. James, the brother of Jesus. So this is not James the disciple. This is James the brother of Jesus who was not a follower.
He wasn't. As far as we can tell, and again, you can read this for yourself. You can figure this out on your own or you can read some commentaries and find that out. As far as we can tell, James he wasn't involved in anything until all of a sudden he starts, and it's after the resurrection. So
because
it's that question. What would it take for you to believe, or me, you don't have a brother, what would it take for me to believe that my brother was my Lord and my Savior? It would take a really big thing. And that's when James changes his mind, as far as we can tell.
And you see us getting a little excited about this because it is, the context sometimes can be so cool. So James doesn't become a believer, a follower of Jesus, until he sees Jesus,
who he saw crucified and put in a tomb. He sees him
alive. And we find in the New Covenant Gospels, we find that Jesus makes a special appearance to his family.
And in fact, and again, we're not really accomplishing yet what we're intending to accomplish, but in fact, not only that, James goes from a 0 to not just any follower. James is like the leader of the church in Jerusalem,
which was at that time the church.
That was it. I guess this context. This is the beginning of all of this.
It is. And now some spreading has been happening because he makes a note here that it is to the Jewish believers who are dispersed. So that's part of the context. So things have been going on.
So commentaries are very, very important to understand a lot of elements, and you've got to be careful the context that you look, the commentaries you look at. But there's a lot of really good ones out there. And one that we kind of just pulled up, it's available again by one click away on this Blue Letter edition of the Bible. This specific website that we've given you the resource to. It's a commentary from Dr. J. Vernon McGee, and this is what he wrote. So he says. If you were to click on this, he says the writer is James. Now, he actually kind of leans into some a little bit of questions about the
Yeah.
authorship, because he says the authorship of this is a little bit of an issue, because there's actually 4 individuals in the Bible that are given the title James. You've got James, the brother of John. You've got James. There's several.
Yes.
James the Less, James the this. But most scholars agree, most people that have researched this, they agree
Right.
this is the brother of Jesus. And then he kind of talks about, again, the context. So the first question, who's writing? Well, this is probably James, the brother of Jesus.
Yes.
The next question, who is he writing to? Well,
he tells us.
He actually tells us. There's no question about that. He tells us in verse 1.
Cole, if he's writing to the
Great
Jews,
point.
What does that have to do with us?
So you look at that and it's like, wait a second, he's not writing to me. He's writing to Jewish people. Yeah, but see, the cool thing is, if you back up even a little bit more and you do just a little more research, you find out that I, as a follower of Jesus, I'm adopted into this Jewish family.
Yes.
And so by connection, by family connection, he's writing to
Yes.
me. He's writing to you.
And just to highlight again, this was probably written before any of the Gospels had been written, any of the biographies, any of the other
Right.
letters. This is, so they
Which
have
is
the
important.
Old Covenant, and now they have
James.
this letter.
They have this letter.
Yes.
J. Vernon McGee says that this probably was written somewhere around maybe 45 AD. So, I mean, we're talking about not much more than a decade, probably after Jesus. And this is probably the very first book. It's a letter, but we call them books, of the New Testament to be written. And so just very interesting to look at the context of who's doing the writing. Who are they writing to? When did they write? And just all of those elements. Very important contextually to understand.
Yes, it
that.
helps paint our understanding.
So if we were to answer that question that we've given you guys yesterday, and we were to say first, understand the context, who wrote it? James, probably the brother of Jesus. Most people agree. Who's it written to? It's written to this Jewish church that is kind of, after about a 10-year period of time, has dispersed, and it's kind of out there, not just in Jerusalem. I mean, it started there, but it went from Jerusalem.
Yeah.
And then what's happened before? Well, there's really not any books. There's no letters that have really been written. This is just hearsay. This is just coming off of first-person conversation about, you'll never believe what happened in Jerusalem about 10 years ago.
Yeah.
This guy, he showed up.
Yeah.
He was arrested. He was beaten. He was crucified. You know what crucifixion's all about.
Yeah,
he was buried, and he came back.
Right.
And out of all of that, this all was born, and that's really the context.
Yes.
So,
awesome. So we would encourage you to, any of those items that kind of stand out to you, we would encourage you to write those down. And that's why we gave you a little journal. And man, I hope you'll fill that up. Okay, not with just your first day, just over the course of time.
So if we continue reading, the next question that we had is kind of looking secondarily to say, what is it about this verse that maybe he's looking to change? Is there, like with Paul's writings, is there something that typically Paul would be trying to realign a church? Or, that was a lot of what he was writing about. James kind of does that too, though.
That's what it looks like.
There's a realignment here.
Yes.
So what is it? Is it a new mindset? Is it a new thought? Is it a new perspective? And I think perspective, probably as much as anything, new attitude, new habit, action, response. What does he want me to know?
Some of those are a little tied together, but it's a big time change in perspective.
So if we read it again, we go back to verse number 2, we kind of start to see the perspective change, because this goes very much against the way I typically operate. Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles come your way, consider it an opportunity for great joy. That is very counterculture to what we typically would think.
And so in this section, we would really kind of verse by verse say, okay, or in this paragraph, what is James actually saying? And that's when we say, look at it, and that's when we say, I'm getting a phone call. Sorry, my ringer is on. That may happen again. But that's when we look at that, that's what we're saying. Okay, what is it exactly that he's saying?
Trying to do? And kind of on this one, it's kind of a perspective change. It's kind of take something that traditionally, typically, hardly would be a bad thing and say, maybe not. Maybe this is in fact, he uses the word opportunity.
Yes. So let's look at it. So we kind of handled the first verse, but on the second verse, he says, "Dear brothers and sisters, when troubles of any kind come your way," and it kind of appears to me that James may not be speaking about those troubles that I create. He says when troubles come your way, in other words, not necessarily he's saying if I make a boneheaded decision, then yeah, there's going to be consequences and you got to pay for that. That it sounds like to me he's saying when something comes your way of any kind that's a trouble that someone thrust upon your life, you didn't deserve it, you didn't earn it, you didn't do something stupid, Harley. This just someone else's maybe trouble has been placed in my lap and it becomes my problem. And he says, when you go through that kind of stuff, that to me, Cole, kind of sounds like what he's saying.
Right.
That when it comes my way, and then here's the perspective change, an opportunity for great joy.
Just the word opportunity completely changes.
Yeah, that changes. Yes, that changes everything.
So we've kind of gone through very quickly, and we've just said, okay, first question, what does it say? Who's writing? What's the context? Who is being written to? When is it being written? All of those important things. What is he writing about?
Yeah.
What's the point? And then the next thing that we've kind of included in our list is kind of it's almost a you section. It's almost a you element. It's, okay, now let me look at myself here.
Yeah.
Okay, so here's what James said. He said, consider it an opportunity when trouble comes your way. It's an opportunity for great joy. And now look at that, and I say, okay, is that how I look at the world?
Right.
Not really.
Yeah. Is that me?
I'm not very good at that.
Right. Me too.
That's not
for me.
Not
it's usually an opportunity to complain
and gripe
and
just
be angry
and honestly feel a little bit sorry for myself.
Yeah.
I mean, that's my go-to.
That's my go-to.
I start feeling sorry for myself, and oh God, why? Why did this have to happen?
Mm-hmm.
Why did that have to happen?
So he says, change your view. It's an opportunity for joy, and then he says why.
And then he tells us why,
yeah.
Which is so cool. So he gives us what he's writing about. It's an opportunity for great joy when trouble comes, when tested. And then he says why. He says because you know that when your faith is tested, your endurance has a chance to grow. So let it grow. And when your endurance is fully developed, you will be perfect and complete, needing nothing. He gives us the what, then he gives us the why.
Yeah, because we can grow. And this can be a little confusing, though. It says, so let it grow, and that's kind of that's frustrating because he's like, Harley, just let it happen.
Let it happen.
Don't.
It's not a bad thing.
Don't complain. Don't run from it. Don't be angry about it. Let this process happen, and here's why.
But there's a word in
Yes, there is. And when your endurance is fully developed, you will be, it says, and this is a little confusing to me, he says, perfect and complete, needing nothing.
So let's back all the way up. Who, James, what, talking about when bad things happen. Why? Because it really gives you an opportunity to grow. And then he explains the word grow a little bit better. He uses the word perfect.
Yeah.
And we talked about muddy spots a few weeks ago, a few months ago, actually.
That could be.
That could be it, because you look at that, it's like perfect.
So I'm going to be
flawless? Be perfect. It's possible for me to be perfect. I can be perfect. But then that goes back to why this specific resource is so good, because literally the touch of a button, the clicking a button on the screen, you can actually go and you can see the actual literal translation from the original language, what that word perfect means. It'll take you to the Strong's Concordance, and basically what you find out if you click on that, if you're kind of doing this study and trying to
understand
feast
it
on every word, you find out that this word perfect that James uses here is actually the word teleos. And this word teleos, I'm going to kind of scroll down here. I've got it on my screen. The word here actually means instead of the words we use the word perfect, the word that jumps out at me is complete.
Yeah.
So the word teleos means complete in various applications of labor, growth, mental, and moral character. Complete.
Yeah. And so the translators chose to help us understand that word by using the word perfect and complete. But for us, that could be a little muddy. So looking at that, complete. As in
that's kind of the goal. That's what I'm trying to get to.
Not that I'm trying to be flawless. I'm trying to be more together. All the parts in their places complete. And those parts, kind of, you just read some, moral, and what else did you read there?
So complete in various applications of labor, growth, mental, and moral character.
There you go.
Yeah.
So that is a better picture, understanding. So
And
not
then
flawless.
If you continue with it,
Yes.
the teleos, it also has a statement, completeness, and then of full age, man, and perfect. So that word perfect's back. But there's just this idea of as you, so the context of as you grow and as you experience these things, it's just going to add to that completeness of
Yes.
you as you develop mentally and as you develop with your moral character. And so if you take all the way of all of those just in 4 verses, look at these as opportunities to grow. Look at these as opportunities to be more complete. Look at these as opportunities
in all those ways.
in all of these ways.
Yeah.
And then that kind of leads us really to the last of the big questions. You know, we kind of had these 3 questions. What does it say? And then,
well, before we hit there, I just want to say a couple more things about how am I doing with that?
Well, that's where, yeah.
So is that
now?
where you
Yeah,
are?
yeah. How
okay.
am I doing with
how
that, and
am
what
I
now? Right.
Yeah. So, you know, I don't. My first reaction is not to see it.
For me, it's to feel sorry for myself.
Yeah.
That's me.
So, and for me, it's probably to get angry. And then the whole, I need these elements to be complete because I'm not. And so if I look at this as here's kind of what God wants, and I'm looking at my life and I'm down here.
Well, in fact, the word we use, and kind of, I think the word we may have even given on that resource was, it's a gap.
Yeah,
there's
a gap.
So this is what James is saying. This is what God is saying through James.
Yes.
Here's where I'm at, right?
Yeah.
Okay, there's a gap. So now what? Do I just leave it a gap?
Right. Or do I try to do everything and hit this right now today and be complete in this day? Probably not going to happen.
Do I try to lower the standard to meet me, which is what I kind of had a tendency to do at times? Like, I'll just bring God's standard a little lower.
Yeah.
Here. Or is it day by day, bite by bite, as we talked about, meal by meal, feasting on every word that comes from the mouth of God, just slowly this journey of trying to close the gap. And so it goes to the question of, okay, what now? And I think what now actually comes back, Harley, to the question we asked at the beginning, which is, let's see, let me find it here. The question of, okay, look, so first, what does it say? What's the context? Then look, what is it that he wants to change in me? Well, it's a perspective change.
Yeah.
So think about how big that gap could be closed if I simply, and this is easier said than done, I know that, change the perspective of when something doesn't go exactly the way I think it should. It's just an opportunity.
Right.
It's not the end of. It's an opportunity, and it's an opportunity, as James says, for me to become more complete.
So
a finished product, so to speak.
I know for me, especially in the beginning, when I'm trying to make a course correction or a thought correction in the beginning, sometimes I need a visual reminder. And so I have at times like taken a verse like that and written that verse actually like on a sticky note, and we encourage you to journal it and write it down here too. But sometimes I need to see it, like put it at my computer or put it in my car, wherever I'm going to, and so that when those opportunities, those troubles come, my first reaction still might be to get angry, but I hopefully could see something that reminds me, oh yeah, verse, change. This is an opportunity, and I need to treat it like that. So for me, the way I learn, I need a visual reminder. I'm probably going to have sticky notes somewhere that I can see during the day to remind me.
That's kind of where every person's a little different.
Yes.
You know, there's one way to skin a cat, so to speak. But
yes. However you learn. Yes.
Right.
Absolutely. And so the first thing, though, we would encourage you to write that down in here. Write the verse, write down some of this other information that you found important, and also write down, what am I going to do about it? So I'm asking God, will you begin to change my heart and my actions? Will your spirit begin to change me this way so I look more and more like you and your words? And you don't have to quote that, but that's the spirit of what we're trying to do. And then we write down, here's what I'm trying to do.
Here's what I'm trying to do. And then the last element, and this one, and I'll be the first to admit it, kind of what we talked about yesterday, being totally transparent. This is almost an eye-rolling statement, I know, because it's kind of churchy sounding.
Yeah.
But share it.
Yeah. Yes.
There's something to be said for having somebody that knows, I really struggle with
Yes.
this area. Whatever it is, I'm bad about this.
Yes.
And having that person that kind of, whether you call it hold you accountable
Yeah.
or whatever the case may be.
Yes, and there's a sense of that because we weren't meant to live this Christ-following life with just Jesus and me. That's never been the intent. If it was, he would have just taken you to heaven as soon as you said yes to Jesus. We are here for a purpose, and part of that purpose is to continue this process of being complete. And in that's where, and Cole and I kind of have some of this built in because we get to talk through and share with each other about all of these things before we ever teach them. And so we kind of have that built in to our relationship. But you need to find somebody that is also a believer, that is also growing, trying to grow in this process, that you can share something like this with. You know what? Here's what I'm trying to do.
You know a great place to find that person? Small groups.
Small groups.
We weren't even planning on going there.
No.
But, they are going to begin signing up for the summer here in about 2 weeks. So small groups is a great place to find that person to share these things.
Yes, absolutely. But then we have a second comment down there of we're not here just for other believers.
It's a circle. It's a continuation. It's a never-ending circle thing because everything just kind of begins again. Yeah.
You're here to influence and love the people around you that are not yet connected to Jesus, and we would encourage you to take a snippet. We don't want us preaching at people, but if there's something you're going through and you learned that is encouraging to you, I would encourage you to find a way, when appropriate, to be able to encourage someone that's not yet a follower of Jesus in some way. And sometimes God just lays something in your lap that you read that day in the Bible, or it may just simply be you sharing compassion and kindness the way Jesus would with another person who's not yet a believer, and developing that relationship at the same time. And so when we say share, we're talking about another believer, but we're also saying find a way to share how God is changing you. So we're not preaching at them what they should do.
That can become self-righteous really fast.
We're saying, you know what? I am so imperfect, but God is working on me in this way, and that can
filling in the gap,
gaps, closing the gap. So I think that's the heart of what this is about.
Right, and so kind of as a next step for us at Stuttgart Harvest Church and the church in Malvern, taking those resources that you were given yesterday, and if you weren't here yesterday for whatever reason, let us know. We can get those resources in your hand, no problem. Taking those resources, this way of studying, not the only way, but a way, and taking these resources that everyone has free of charge at your fingertips, and just starting that process of feasting every day on every word that comes from the mouth of God.
And as we said at the beginning of the year, it's just kind of one of those one-step habits. And I'm glad you reminded them, Cole, this is not the only way to do it. We just want you to at least have experienced and heard a way to do it. And because this is the process, this is a way to feast on those words.
And it's not studying per se. It's just taking something that has been left for me, as James said, that perfection, that becoming complete. And here it is, and we have access to it, and why not use it?
Absolutely. So with that, I think we're going to wrap this up. We're glad we recognized the vast majority of folks will watch this later. That's great. There may be a few with us right now, and we just want to say hi to you. We're glad you're here. And to those that will be watching later, learning with us, we hope all of us together will continue this process. So, Cole, anything else you want to add before we head out?
The Great Romance. If you're watching this week, during the week this is being filmed, so the week of April the 30th through May the, whatever day it's going to be, 7th, brand new series, Stuttgart Harvest Church in Malvern, The Great Romance. And got plenty of room. We would love to see you.
All right. Bye-bye.